when exploring Skyrim's frigid climate, there are many stories that draw you in, from the fantastical, to the bleak, to the dire. And yet every so often you might happen upon something more unsettling. The existence and implication of paranormal entities are hardly alien to this world, and so it's rare for something to chisel its way into your imagination and put you, even marginally, on edge. However, there are still such instances, and in today's video I intend to cover one. For out in Skyrim's northern regions, between the towns of Dawnstar and Morthal, at a place known as Frostmere Crypt, we can encounter something ever so slightly more disquieting than your average ghost, and while not universally significant, is still a rather unsettling story. I am of course talking about the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim's Pale Lady. Upon our arrival at Frostmere Crypt, we may notice something interesting occurring in the entrance. A bandit being pursued by other bandits, who are actively charging from Frostmere Crypt as if to indicate they've set up a hideout within. To find out more about what's going on, we can rescue the bandit, who's clearly at odds with her former comrades, not that she needed much help in my case, and ask what's going on.
Who in Dagon's name are you? Speak, or I'll cut you down where you stand.
Wait, what's going on here?
I was part of the gang in the ruins here. Friend of mine went crazy and stole the boss's sword. They blamed me for it. Look, I'm done here. Mop the floor with these idiots for all I care. Just get out of my way.
And with that, Asa Blackthorn will walk away. She has nothing of interest on her person, thought I'd clear that up, and we will have begun the quest, the Pale Lady, which summarises what we've just encountered, as outside Frostmere Crypt I found a group of bandits attacking one of their own. It seems she was implicated when one of her friends stole a sword from the leader of the gang, and our primary objective is to find the stolen sword. However, as an optional objective we can endeavour to find out more about what actually took place here. A mission that will no doubt require us to move lightly and avoid detection for as long as possible, for perhaps as we move through these ruins, the bandits within might let slip some more information.
But Isa? She's smarter than that.
Rogier was always dragging her into things.
But stealing the boss's sword? Did he have a death wish?
Who knows? The cat was crazy. She was a fool to trust him.
The first couple bandits we encounter upon our entry discuss Isa Blackthorn and her friend who clearly stole the boss's sword. Based on this dialogue, we understand this friend of hers to be a Khajiit named Rogier. On the bandits' remains outside and on the floor in here, we can find a bounty note from an individual named Kier, outlining his orders regarding the incident. Kill Isa and Rogier on sight. 100 gold to whoever brings me their heads. Spread the word. This via Occam's razor indicates this Kier to be the bandit leader, the one whom Rogier stole the sword from. But this raises a few questions. Why risk stealing a bandit leader's sword when you're currently under his employ? It doesn't strike me as a rational course of action to undertake. And if such a decision is irrationally provoked, just what could provoke it? To find out more, we'll simply need to head deeper into the ruin. The first real thing we'll happen upon is a barred door, driving us in one direction towards a caged walkway in a larger room.
What? There's a whole shift down there.
Kerr's orders. Nobody goes in or out until he gets back. Or the boss will skin you as soon as he's done with Rogier.
Gods, what a mess.
Another big question that arises is what exactly are these bandits doing in these ruins? What are they looking for? And, moreover, as indicated by this previous dialogue, what had they found? Fortunately, venturing just a bit further reveals more.
Boss went down there? Today?
Yeah, he's after Rogier. Never seen him so angry.
I've got a bad feeling about this. Something's just felt wrong down there lately. Eerie.
Now you're sounding as crazy as the cat. Be going on about the Pale Lady next.
We learn from these two that the boss went down there, and something just isn't right about down there. And we also learn Rogier, who stole the sword, has been rambling about a pale lady. Perhaps the bandit leader's journal, which can be found next to his bed, might yield more answers. It reads, Frostmere Crypt, week 12. What a disaster. We haven't seen a caravan in a week. We actually lost ground in the tunnels. Thal and his team were crushed when their section collapsed. I've heard word of a mutiny. If next week isn't any better. Week 13. 2 new recruits. Isa and Rogier. Girl said she did time in Sidna Mine down in Markarth, and it shows. She's got more experience than all of us put together. I've put her in charge of the dig. Cat's good with a blade, so I've sent him topside with the raiders. Week 14. Tunnels going well. Isa made our first big find just yesterday. Buried chest with a couple hundred gold. Topside, Rogier and his team have hit 5 merchants this week. In and out faster than the guard could respond. Looks like things are finally going my way. Week 15. The tunnel broke out into some kind of giant cavern. There's a whole forest down there. Found a nice sword all laid out on some kind of monument and everything. But this is just strange. Eerie. What is this place? Not like any tomb I've ever seen. Week 16. I think that cat's gone crazy. All of a sudden, he can't focus, keeps muttering to himself. He's gone from our best raider to our worst. Botched 2 jobs just today. Isa's trying to cover for him, but she's not fooling anyone. Lately, he keeps asking to see my sword, begging to borrow it, like I'll let him get his paws on it. It's beautiful, perfectly balanced, and better than any I've ever held. Sure, he can have it. Right in the gut. From this, we learn Rogier's mental state has declined incredibly rapidly over the short time that Kier knew him, devolving from a competent raider, one trusted to lead raids against caravans, into an incompetent, muttering buffoon. We also learn these bandits discovered something unusual. A forest hidden in a cavern deep in this crypt, along with a sword. And I'd bet money that same sword is what Rogier was after, the sword Rogier had since stolen. In the other room we'll find more documents relevant to our investigation. On a small rounded table accompanied by 2 seats we'll find both a note from Rogier and Isa's journal. First, here's what Isa's journal has to say. Left the White River gang this morning with Hyvar's thugs on our tail. Wasn't a bad gig, but it was time to move on. Rogier and I weren't getting anywhere with him in charge. I'll never understand how he does it. I couldn't find so much as a rumour in Windhell, while Rogier stayed outside the city, got wasted on moon sugar, and still managed to find us a lead. Some gang out Morthal way. They're holed up in an old ruin, digging it out in between raids on the caravans. Joined up with Kier's band, their treasure hunting dig is a disaster. 3 months of work have barely cleared a single haul, and 6 men have died from cave-ins. I've taken charge of the dig, while Rogier is leading the raids topside. Maybe the year in Sidna Mine will pay off after all. You'd think a man who could swing a sword could use a pickaxe, but these louts are exhausted after barely an hour. No wonder this tunnel's taking forever. I've set up round-the-clock shifts, and ordered double rations for the best diggers. That'll give them some incentive. Night shift woke me to say they'd found something big. Kier, Rogier and I went down to take a look. It's huge, like a whole forest was just swallowed by the earth, with a big old monument out in the centre. Kier took the sword from it as a trophy, proof his whole plan was finally paying off. For once, he might be right. Rogier's been having nightmares over the past few days. He keeps muttering about a pale lady, one of those swamp women who steal children away at night. I think. To think some fool story could turn the toughest bandit I know into a cowering kitten, frightened of his own shadow. I'm just glad none of the others see him like this. It's getting worse. Rogier can barely sleep at all now, and whenever he dozes off, he wakes up screaming. Woke the whole place last night. He says the pale lady is coming for us. She's down in the forest. We have to return the sword or she'll kill us all. Not a chance. The boss clings to that thing like he was born with it. I've told everyone Rogier just has a fever, but this can't go on. I've pulled a few things together. I'll slip out tonight and never look back. Not only does this document where Isa and Rogier came from, being the White River gang who can be found at White River Watch, just east of the city of White Run, where should we venture to contend with All for the Blind and his literary masterpiece, and the leader Hyvar, we can find journal entries that corroborate that Rogier used to be an incredibly competent outlaw. And since they mutinied and ran away and joined up with a different gang, that competence only quickly declined following events discovering what appeared to be a forest beneath Frostmere Crypt. Could it be his use of moon sugar very suddenly catching up to him, or was something disturbed when a sword was taken from an altar in that forest? Fortunately, in that respect, we have both a name and a locale to be getting on with. Rogier's ramblings of a pale lady may seem like the mumblings and fumblings of a very mad man, but a book titled Lost Legends by Talskar the Elder hypothesizes a more worrisome explanation. It documents the ancient legends of Skyrim that have been lost to the ages, those reduced to folk tales. And here's this book's entry on the Pale Lady. For generations, the people of Morthal have told whispered tales of the Pale Lady, a ghostly woman who wanders the northern marshes, forever seeking her lost daughter. Some say she steals children who wander astray, others that her sobbing wail strikes dead all those who hear it, but behind these tales may lie a kernel of truth. For ancient records speak of Omriel, a mysterious figure Ysgramor's heirs battled for decades, and finally sealed away. Now, while it is easier to discuss where Frostmere Crypt is located in proximity to Dawnstar, it isn't terribly far away from Morthal. And so we've got the correct name of this lost legend, and we're in the correct geographical location, roughly. It would appear as if Kier's band of merry men has stumbled upon where Ysgramor's heirs had sealed Omriel away, and by removing the blade, may very well have released her. And if it does turn out to be the case that these bandits have unleashed a mysterious, powerful figure of an era long since past, is it not a stretch that said figure would influence the gang's most competent arm to their bidding, giving Rogier the appearance of a bumbling buffoon, albeit effective in his obsession? After all, he did manage to steal the sword that he was ranting about returning, and does appear to be presently in the process of doing just that. And the note he'd scrawled and left on the desk next to Isa's journal will give us our first insight into his perspective. Isa, I see her in every shadow, hear her voice on every breath of wind. In my dreams, in my ears, in my mind, the Pale Lady. We have to stop her. Just return the sword, and we can shut her away forever. I can't take this anymore. I have to do it. I must. Rogier. And so it seems this Pale Lady is influencing Rogier's mental state by haunting him selectively, perhaps as a means to control him or just to drive him to do something silly. Despite this, if anything, the cat is proving resistant to the Pale Lady's attempts to control him, and instead he wishes to return the sword to seal her away forever. It's unclear if she's instilled this belief that this will banish her, or if he's still thinking logically at all. But the way he views it, the removal of the blade from that sanctuary has transformed his ruthless criminal life into a waking nightmare, and his focus, or whatever is left of his focus, is now trained solely on banishing the Pale Lady. As for why his fellow bandits will see him as having lost his touch, well, the fact they're excavating an old ruin in search of treasure indicates they're likely not the most superstitious, and their concurrent operations raiding caravans tells us they're neither reverent nor particularly empathetic. In short, at most they were a drop of hubris away from disaster, and being bandits I somehow doubt they lack for that. Therefore, any concerns stemming from things that sound wildly outlandish are unlikely to be taken remotely seriously in the event they become inconvenient. And let's just say returning the major loot found on this dig certainly falls under the category of ideas not to take kindly to. There's no denying the Pale Lady had at least attempted to invade Rogier's mind, and that did have a profound impact, but there's no telling just how much. And as we find our way to this underground forest ourselves, the state we find the feared Kier in serves as the greatest indicator that the cat still has his claws.
Finally, someone came. The cat, Rajir, ambushed me. He's trying to take the sword back. I can't.
Now, I don't think I'll ever get over the fact that Skyrim doesn't seem to be able to handle people dying stationary, but not only have we now ventured into the forest underground, but we've also learned that Kier is still capable of carrying out an ambush, and in doing so has successfully felled Kier, proving himself both capable of taking a bandit leader onto his own terms and then killing him, would suggest at least his capabilities aren't affected. However, the Pale Lady has inspired him to mutiny against his boss, not that that's necessarily anything new for the guy. Anyway, pushing forward will bring us face to face with the Pale Lady, a wisp mother accompanied by her wisps, and before we can really intervene, we can witness her bringing about an abrupt end to the Khajiit's suffering. Just perhaps not the end he'd hoped for. Nonetheless, he's left us with quite the fight, and you can very well just fight the Pale Lady and defeat her in combat. But there is another way, a way that confirms she was indeed sealed away here. What you need to do is acquire the sword. It's known as the Pale Blade and can be found on Rajir's body. We simply need to take this and place it on the altar. Doing so will banish the Wisp Mother and end the quest. But be mindful, should you decide to pick the blade up again, she'll come back, proving that as long as the sword is on the altar, she cannot physically manifest, but once removed she's free to attack us, in our case, directly, but obviously that wasn't the tactic she employed with regards to Rajir and Kier's bandits. Regardless of which tactic is adopted, or if indeed you use banishing the Pale Lady momentarily as a tactic to defeat her, we're still left with the question what or who is or was the Pale Lady. Well, obviously she's a Wisp Mother, but that doesn't necessarily give us a clear picture. It appears these creatures don't have an awfully comprehensive understanding in lore. However, in Skyrim there is a book called The Wisp Mother 2 Theories, penned by Matthias Etienne, that leaves us with quite the range of possibilities. Most tales only agree on a few basic facts about Wisp Mothers. They are always female. They take the form of human, some say elven spirits, wreathed in mist and decaying rags. They have an affinity for frost magic, rarely appearing in more temperate climes. But beyond that, the tales differ wildly. Some say they are ghosts, waiting to be laid to rest. Others that they are all that remains of the Snow Elves who once ruled Skyrim. Some say they are native to Hjalmarch, or the North more generally, but other tales mention them in forgotten places on mountain tops as far away as the Gerals. Most reputable scholars dismiss these stories, preferring instead to focus on the few documented sightings from recent years. From these, two dominant theories have emerged. Based on his extensive research into necromancy and Cyrodiil's Iliad culture, Master Sadrin Sarethi posits that Wisp Mothers are a necrologic state, a type of lichdom developed by a now forgotten First Era culture. Under his theory, these are no mere ghosts. They are a cult of powerful sorceresses who achieved eternal life through undeath. Alternatively, Lidette Villain of the Synod contends that Wisp Mothers are not undead at all, but rather elemental manifestations arising out of Nirn itself. By noting several similarities to Spriggans and Ice Wraiths, she contends that the Wisp Mothers are essentially elemental personifications of snow or mist, innately wielding the power of their element, instead of manipulating it through conventional sorcery. So that gives us an awful lot of room for interpretation with regard to what Wisp Mothers actually are, but it's the stories, notably dismissed by reputable scholars, that get my attention here. You see, if this particular named Wisp Mother, the Pale Lady, is in fact Omriel who warred with Ysgramor's heirs, then it would make sense for Omriel to have been a snow elf, as Ysgramor did otherwise extensively war with them. And though I wouldn't necessarily use this argument to generate a hard and fast rule behind what a Wisp Mother actually is, because for all we know there may be a plethora of explanations for what causes them to be, it is interesting that an explanation that validates an already growing theory is listed in an in-game document at all, even if it is considered one of the less than founded. So to me that clarifies the Pale Lady and Umriel are more than likely one and the same, and she was locked away here in Frostmere Crypt a long time ago, until of course somebody unwittingly disturbed that imprisonment when they stumbled upon the ancient Nord sword known as the Pale Blade. And I suppose the Pale Blade being of ancient Nordic design is another giveaway. It's a cool sword though, very useful, and apparently its enchantment can be recharged by placing it back on this altar without the use of any soul gems. Regardless, that brings us to the end of today's video, and I suppose the moral of this story is, don't go unearthing esoteric things that people of the past have elected to bury, for instance an underground forest, because the chances are better than good, there's a reason for it. Anyway, thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff. Of course, if you enjoyed, maybe drop me a follow on some social media. And of course, if you're new here and enjoyed this video, maybe check out my other videos on the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The playlist is growing, and along with it I feel my knowledge of a very insane universe. Thanks again for putting up with me, and with any luck I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point. But until next time, please take care and goodbye.